Straight up. God, welcome back to your Way Happy Bible Study. This has been a real weird one today, hasn't it? I'm going to fold my legs up in this chair and get kind of comfortable. We're going to get into this. I'm looking at the chat room and on YouTube. Hi, guys. Salman Mohammed Al-Wada says pictures of Jesus are blasphemy, but yet you have 95% of the Christian world using those pics. Those pics are probs the Antichrist when he comes. Christians will think he is Jesus, so they will be fooled. No, they didn't have cameras back then. What you see, pictures of Jesus, that's not what Jesus looks like. He's right about that. God said, "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image." Okay, and so pictures of Jesus would fall under that category. Okay. Cheryl says, "I ride a motorcycle, so you can call me a holy roly." Oh, I love you guys. You're so funny. I love the little sheep icon you've got. Cheryl says, "Lisa, is the blockchain evil, you think? What is the blockchain?" I don't know what that is, sister. I'm sorry. I don't know what that is. Let's go over. I can't tell you if I don't know what it is, so I'm sorry for my ignorance there. Hi, Melissa. Now I'm over here on Facebook with you guys. Hi, Melissa. She says, "It was meant for me to hear this. Divine appointment. Glory to God." So crazy. This just happened to my son at school yesterday. Thank you. Oh, wow. That's awesome. Jan says, "Joseph is my favorite. His story is so relatable to me. Brings tears to my eyes every time. It's an amazing story. It's a picture of the Messiah. Joseph is." Hi, Jan. She says, "Hi, Lisa." Let's see. Linda says, "Good evening, Lisa." Hi, Linda. Nice to see you, sister. I'm trying to click the like on these so you guys will know that I've seen your comments. Let's see. Let me click on these so you guys will know I've seen them. Let's go on down here. Wow, there's a lot of you guys here watching tonight. You can watch, Cheryl says she can't watch on Facebook. We're simulcast on YouTube, on Facebook. Oh, did I not? I might not have shared the link on my other wall, Reekage. Maybe somebody will have mercy on me and do that for me. Take the link and put it on my wall without the hyphen, if there's anybody out there that's willing to do that, because I don't want to interrupt the broadcast to do that right now. Okay. Let's get into our Genesis study. Okay. You want to? We'll pick up in our study tomorrow. We'll start in Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 6. Let's see. And that'll be on the 24th. Make myself a note here. All right. Now we're going to go get back into our study in Genesis. This is a cool study. Okay? A very cool study. Let me where did we leave off? 2440. Let's see what this one's telling me. Okay, we ended at Genesis 31:7. And we're going to start in Genesis 31:8. Got to keep track of this. Okay, we're going to start in our Genesis study in chapter 31, verse 8. Now, yesterday when we were going through this study, in chapter 31, we reached the point where Jacob was wanting to leave and depart from Laban. Laban had changed his wages 10 times, had not been, this is his father-in-law, but it's also his uncle. Laban had been dishonest with Jacob. So we're starting now. Let's recap just a tiny little bit here. In verse 3, in verse 2, Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. Laban is starting to get jealous of Jacob's success and prosperity via the Lord's blessing. In verse 3, and the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto the land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. So now the Lord has told Jacob to return. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock, and said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before. Laban is becoming weird toward Jacob. He's angry and he's jealous of Jacob's success, and he's jealous that it's not his own success as well anymore. Jacob had worked for him for 21 years. Okay, he worked for 7 years for Leah, 7 years for Rachel, and then another 7 years to gather his own flock, to be given his own flock and to be given wages. And so in verse 5, and said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before. But the God of my father hath been with me. And ye know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father hath deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. But God suffered him not to hurt me. Now we're going to move forward in verse 8. If he said thus, the speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said thus, the ring-straked shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ring-straked. Thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. And this is why Laban's countenance had changed toward Jacob. And you could tell that Laban was irritated, and it just was becoming a situation where it wasn't a good thing anymore. It was time. God was changing things because he wanted Jacob to go back to his family. In verse 10 of Genesis chapter 31, and it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up mine eyes and saw in a dream. And behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes and see. All the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. So God is purposely changing things in Jacob's favor and against Laban, which would explain Laban's bad attitude at that point. In verse 13, I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowedst a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? So now, not only is Jacob taking the wealth that God has blessed upon him, but his wives, Rachel and Leah, they're looking to their father going, well, where's our inheritance? They want their father to give part of what little he's got left to them. In verse 15, are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us, and hath quite devoured also our money. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours, and our children's, now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do. So they're in agreement with Jacob. Then Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives upon camels, and he carried away all his cattle and all his goods which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting, which he had gotten in Paddan Aram, for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. In verse 19 of Genesis chapter 31. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. These were like little idols, like false gods, little statues, graven images, idols. And she stole those, and they belonged to her father. In verse 20, and Jacob stole away unaware to Laban the Syrian, in that he told him not that he fled. So Jacob is packing up all his stuff, and he's going to leave. And he's not even going to tell Laban that he's leaving. In verse 21, so he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river and set his face toward the Mount Gilead. In verse 22, and it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob was fled. And he took his brethren with him and pursued after him 7 days' journey. And they overtook him in the Mount Gilead. So Laban is chasing him down, chasing Jacob down. Took him 7 days to catch up with him, and now he has caught up with him. And God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night, and said unto him, take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the Mount of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, what hast thou done that thou hast stolen away unawares to me, and carried away my daughters as captives taken with the sword? Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly, and steal away from me, and didst not tell me, that I might have sent thee away with mirth? That's laughter and celebration, and with songs, and with tabret, and with harp. He's saying, I could have given you a celebration before you left. Why did you take off without telling me? In verse 28, and hast not suffered me to kiss my sons and daughters? He's talking about the children born by Leah and Rachel. So hast thou now done foolishly in so doing. So Laban is not obeying the Lord, is he? Because the Lord told him, don't you say anything good or bad to Jacob. And so now he says, thou hast now done foolishly in so doing. In verse 29, it is in the power of my hand to do you hurt. But the God of your father spake unto me yesternight, saying, Take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. He's doing it anyway, though, isn't he? In verse 30, And now, though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longest after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? Gods? Thou shalt have no other gods before me, says the Lord. But Laban had idols that he called his gods. And Rachel took them. She stole them, and Jacob didn't know. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, Because I was afraid. For I said, Peradventure thou wouldest take by force thy daughters from me. In verse 32, With whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. So Jacob doesn't know that Rachel took them. And he's saying, if you find them in the possession of anybody here, you kill them. Let them not live. Before our brethren, discern thou what is thine with me, and take it to thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the two maidservants' tents, searching for his idols. But he found them not. Then went he out of Leah's tent and entered into Rachel's tent. So he's searching the whole camp for his idols. In verse 34, Now Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture. That is the seat upon the camel that she was riding upon, and sat upon them. So she's sitting on them. Instead of them being in her tent, she's on the camel on this seat, and they're underneath her. She's sitting on them. And Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. In verse 35, And she said to her father, Let it not displease my lord, that I cannot rise up before thee. For the custom of women is upon me. She's saying, well, I'm on my cycle. And he searched, but found not the images. In verse 36, And Jacob was wroth. He was angry, and chode with Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, What is my trespass? What have I done wrong? What is my sin that thou hast so hotly pursued after me? In verse 37, Whereas thou hast searched all my stuff, what hast thou found of all thy household stuff? He's saying, have you found anything in all my stuff that you've searched through? Have you found anything that belongs to you? He says, What hast thou found of all thy household stuff? Set it here before my brethren and thy brethren, that they may judge betwixt us both. This 20 years have I been with thee. Thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their young. Now, casting their young means that they are born prematurely and they die. And the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. He's not eaten any of Laban's animals. In verse 39, That which was torn of beasts I brought not unto thee. So any that were torn of beasts, Jacob replaced with his own that belonged to, any that were destroyed of Laban's, Jacob gave of his own to make up for it. He said, That which was torn of beasts I brought not unto thee. I bear the loss of it. Of my hand didst thou require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. In verse 40, Thus I was in the... Oh, Troy's going to take us to a real quick break. When we come back, we're going to start again in Genesis 31. Right after this.